Hi, my name's Christine, and I'm not a YouTuber, so this is actually my first video. Really nervous about it, but I felt like I needed some sort of outlet to state how I'm feeling about the state of the Star Wars galaxy, at least from my perspective. I am in my mid to late 30s. I've got two little boys. I'm a single mom. My oldest is Leland. He actually does have a YouTube channel. His YouTuber name is Blaze Jr.
And go check it out.
Go check it out. My youngest, who's almost 5, is Lincoln. And yeah, I mean,
And I'm eating Cheetos on the couch.
yes, he is. Okay, so I guess what I wanted to do is I wanted to talk about the Star Wars universe, and I should preface this by saying I haven't seen The Rise of Skywalker. I'm a huge Star Wars fan. I even liked Rogue One. I saw that one. Some people didn't like it. Thought it was too, I guess, fan servicey or whatnot. That's okay, and that's okay. People can have totally different opinions of different things. I loved the ending because I loved seeing Darth Vader kind of in his element of that kind of whole being a badass. I thought that I was like, that's why a scary villain. And I did like The Force Awakens. I know it was kind of a rehash of Episode 4. I was fine with that because it was an introduction, and so I was really looking forward to seeing what they were going to do. I assumed that they weren't going to do another Empire Strikes Back. They were going to take it in another direction, which I was fine with. But at the same time, the Star Wars universe still has certain rules that should be followed. And I feel like at this point they've pretty much broken all the rules so that anything goes. And for me, Star Wars has never been like a sci-fi thing. It's been it's much bigger than that, and it's always been a huge part of my life. It's something that I really enjoy. I even read some of the books. I loved the expanded universe. I thought the characters still felt like the characters. I mean, I remember the first one I read because I'm kind of a systematic person, so I want to read things in order. So the first one I read was the book that happens like right after the Return of the Jedi, and I still loved that. I thought that all the characters seemed like how they would be the next day. Some of them were worn out and tired, and just because the Empire lost, it's not like we have this republic now that just takes over. It takes time for governments to change. I liked how it wasn't like like, yes, the Empire Strikes Back, Return of the Jedi. Yes, at the end of Return of the Jedi, everyone's partying and everyone's happy, and that's great. But it doesn't mean that things are just easy now. So I kind of appreciated that. I loved reading the courtship of Leia. There were a lot of books that I just really enjoyed reading, and all the characters were in character, and they still continue to grow. I think the only thing that really bothered me about the Force Awakens, and probably seems like a minor thing maybe to some people, but the fact that the villain is named Ben and it's Han and Leia's kid, and I'm like, that doesn't make any sense. In the books, Luke had a kid with Mara Jade, and they named him Ben, and that made sense because Luke knew Obi-Wan Kenobi as Ben Kenobi. It didn't make sense for the others to name him Ben because Princess Leia didn't know him. She referred to him as Obi-Wan. So it just that kind of annoyed me a bit. I was interested in seeing what happened with Finn. I thought that was kind of an interesting take, a stormtrooper changing, deciding to not follow the Empire, or I guess the First Order, and just being, I'd never seen that before, so I thought that was interesting. I was kind of interested to see where his arc was going to go. I did really like seeing Han Solo and Chewie back on the Millennium Falcon. That did make me smile. I wasn't happy with the fact that he was back as being a smuggler because, in the books, he had done so much more. He'd become a military leader. And even when he wasn't doing that, he didn't backtrack and whatnot. He was still a respected member of the Republic, and I couldn't understand why he wasn't together with Leia anymore. It wasn't even talked about why they weren't really. It just seemed odd, especially like in the books. They did have a son that turned to the dark side, Jason, and that didn't break them up or anything. And they suffered a lot of tragedies in the books, and they still remain strong together. And so those are the couple of things that bothered me, but I was still hopeful that they were kind of going into some sort of direction. I was convinced that Rey was Luke Skywalker's daughter because his lightsaber called to her, and I was like, why else would it do that? Like, there's no, like, a lightsaber's not sentient, so that made sense to me. So I had been waiting. I wanted to see the flashback. I thought it would be really cool to see the flashback to find out what happened, why Luke had left, what happened to the Jedi Academy, and then Last Jedi happened, and at first I was like, okay, I was entertained, and like I'm a big Star Wars fan. I'm like, I gotta like this, right? So for a while I kept going, yeah, I had issues, but it's okay. And then I had time to really think about it, and it was just not Star Wars. It just didn't feel like Star Wars. I mean, I had big issues with Yoda coming down and shooting lightning, and I'm like, when did Force Ghosts ever be able to do that? Like, the whole point of Force Ghosts, well, first of all, Force Ghosts were also something that you had to learn. Like, they mentioned in episode 3 that Qui-Gon Jinn had learned how to do it, and then trained Obi-Wan to do it. It's not something that just every Jedi knows how to do. I mean, it makes sense. Yoda probably knows how to do it. So I don't have an issue with him showing up as a Force ghost. But if they can do like that sort of thing, then it kind of makes Obi-Wan look like a jerk in Empire Strikes Back when he's like, I can't interfere. And so it's more like, no, I can, but I just don't want to, and that bothers me because Obi-Wan is like an awesome character. So that's kind of a backhanded way to insult a beloved character, I guess. And that's how it felt to me. And also Yoda was acting like crazy Yoda, and he only acted like that at the very beginning of meeting Luke Skywalker as a test. Why is he like acting like that? It just didn't make any sense. And it just felt like, why are you okay? Why do the Jedi have to die? Why are you destroying everything? It felt like, I mean, the thing that really appealed to me about Star Wars was that it was this whole idea of good versus evil, how you can you can even think you're going on a good path, but certain actions can start leading you towards a dark path, and such. I like that contrast with human nature. If you let yourself do small steps of something bad, even if you can say you can justify it, well, like the ends justify the means, it can alter how you are for your life. So I just liked that concept. So it felt like they were trying, like this movie was trying to say, we don't need any of that. This, it's kind of like we're living in this very anti-religious world, so they're trying to bring that into Star Wars, and say like you don't need it anymore. And if you're not religious, that's totally fine. I'm just saying, from my perspective, it just felt like it was very. It started to get very political, and the great thing about the original trilogy was that it was vague enough that it didn't center on what was happening in the world during that time. I'm finding that politics, like current politics, keep getting in the way of these kind of movies, and and if you don't like the movie, then you get called all sorts of names. Now, last I checked, I am a woman, and a lot of people who said that they didn't like The Last Jedi were called sexist. I am not sexist. This has nothing to do with that. I just thought it was a bad film. It didn't seem like very Star Warsy, if that's a thing. And I didn't like what the characters were. Luke was this, and we all go through times where we're maybe much more bitter or upset about things. We've all had stuff that happened in our lives that could make us that. But Luke was, even if something really bad happened to Luke, he was still like the most optimistic person in the galaxy. I mean, we're talking about a guy who went on this suicide mission to save the second most evil person in the galaxy because he was his dad. Like, he's like, I want to reach him. And so because his nephew, because Ben Solo is his nephew, is the son of his best friend and his sister, because he had a bad dream or something, he was going to kill him in his sleep. He didn't talk to Leia about it, or Solo, or like what. So you think he would try some other things first, from murder, and then even then, that was enough apparently to flip Kylo Ren and make him into somebody who basically kills everybody in the academy. Okay. It just, that whole, like, I was so looking forward to this sequence. I was waiting to see what happened. I thought that Snoke got a hold of him ahead of time, and that he manipulated him and turned him, and I thought that's why he turned and he went and he killed everybody. Like, I guess kind of like the way the Emperor did with Anakin. So it just seemed very like, what? That's just my opinion. And then I felt like, and then I was like, wait a minute, you're telling me that Rey's parents are nobody? Like, then why is she good at everything? Like, I mean, even if she was the daughter of Luke Skywalker, or in this case, okay, spoiler, anyone who hasn't seen Rise of Skywalker, probably because I'll be talking about Rise of Skywalker next, even though I haven't seen it, I do know a lot of what happened in the movie. Okay, so even if she's Palpatine's granddaughter, which I'm really curious to know who her parents are, because there's like no, does it skip a generation? Who knows? Palpatine learned how to do stuff from his Sith master. So why is Rey just good at everything with very little training? I know they try to do like a training montage or whatever in Rise of Skywalker, but even before that, I was like, when, like, you know, when can you, like, she can lift everything? Like in the beginning of Empire Strikes Back, Luke could barely pull his lightsaber to him when he was in desperate need of it. And then he went to Dagobah, and he was trained by Yoda, and he just, you know, like, and even still after that, they kept saying, "You're not ready yet. You're not ready. You're, you know." But Luke had such a heart about him that he couldn't stand the fact that his friends were suffering. That he didn't listen, and he went, and he lost to Darth Vader. He got his hand cut off, you know, and Darth Vader probably could have killed him. He stopped because he was trying to turn his son. I take that now to mean maybe he had this kind of desire to, you know, he the little part of him that was still good wanted to, you know, preserve his son if he could. You know, he lost. What exactly did Rey ever lose? She didn't lose a limb. She didn't have the second most evil person in the galaxy telling me his father. Yes, she does have Palpatine as a grandfather. So I mean, there is that. But she also, like, she's just good at everything. I mean, at least Anakin kind of had a reason. I mean, you know, they talked about his midichlorian count. I know some people aren't a fan of the midichlorian count. Yes, so Anakin kind of had a reason, and even then, he was not all powerful. You know, he still had to be trained. He was trained for like a decade, you know, before the Clone Wars, and even then there was still some time after that, you know, to further his training. Jedi are constantly looking for knowledge. They have books. They're constantly, like, this is kind of their lifestyle, really, seeking knowledge and whatnot, as well as being peacekeepers to the galaxy. You know, and so it really bothered me. Like, I was like, okay, I can deal with it a little bit. She learned force persuasion really quickly. Well, like, even in a video game that, you know, concept, you usually take time to learn that sort of thing. But okay, sure, fine, whatever. And then Kylo Ren's also a little injured. Maybe, you know, she beat him. Fine, okay, whatever. It's like, now she can move incredible things, and now I get into the Rise of Skywalker, I'm prefacing, I haven't seen it, but I have seen a lot of things on it. I do know what happens in it. Now all of a sudden she can hold entire spaceship, like, that's video game stuff, you know, which nobody believes is I mean, that's not entirely true. KOTOR, which is one of my favorite video games, is considered you too, is considered canon. Now, speaking of KOTOR, I'm probably one of the few people, like, I know that canonically they have said Revan is male. I'm probably one of the few people that I preferred Revan, the concept of Revan, to be female, and that's not a sexist thing. That was just my preference, because and so if you have your preference that you like Revan to be male, it's totally fine. Some people prefer the Exile to be male. That's again your preference. I know canonically the Exile is female. The reason why I liked Revan as a female was just because, spoiler here if you haven't played the game, so stop this video here if you don't want to know what happens in KOTOR. I liked that Revan was female because I played as a female, and in the game you find out you are Revan. So, and I liked the concept because well, first of all, I hadn't seen too many, like, yes, there's Ventress and there's some other female villains, and there definitely are some in the books. I guess that was the first time I'd ever seen, like, the Dark Lord of the Sith, like, the ultimate bad guy be female. And again, it's not real. I also kind of liked how the story flowed in that direction. I romanced Karth, and I know some people like him, some people don't. That's totally fine. This is all just my opinion. You don't have to agree with everything I say. You don't have to agree with anything I say. I also liked the idea that when you find out that you're Revan, that now you kind of have this relationship problem because Karth didn't know, and he already had trust issues. And so now it's like, but whereas when you're a male, and I did try playing it once as a male, I didn't really like the character. I thought the character came across as really arrogant, especially the way that the character flirted with Bastila. And I just, like, and it wasn't, like, suave, like Han Solo type suave. It just came across as very arrogant and whatnot. I don't know. I was like that. I didn't like the dialogue as much. Some people think the dialogue in the female romance is cheesy. That's fine. But also Bastila knew, so it wasn't a secret for them when she finds out that he's Revan. So anyway, again, this is just different perspective. Most people, I think, prefer Revan to be male, and that's totally fine. I think it's harder when these games are you can be either. It'd be like doing a Mass Effect movie. I know some guys who prefer the woman, and I know some women who prefer the men. So it's a lot harder, which one do you pick when you do a movie? Because I did hear that they might do a movie. I don't know if that's still happening, because, there's a lot of fluctuations going on in the Star Wars galaxy or Star Wars universe. Everyone can have their own opinion on it. Please don't think that this is me telling anybody what to think, because it's not. This is just, I'm pretty sure that my parents are getting tired of me talking to them about it, and I don't really have any friends that I could really talk to. I did try to talk to a coworker once about it, and he said he didn't understand. Like, he's watched the movies, but he's like, I don't understand Star Wars fans. I think they need to kind of get a life, because like, Star Wars is not more important than family. And I was like, nobody's saying that it is. I mean, I love my kids. No, I'm always gonna love my kids. But that doesn't mean that I can't be passionate about something or upset when something kind of that something that I love feels like it's starting to be destroyed. So I also don't like the fact that that Jedi now apparently have all these powers. They kind of resemble Marvel superheroes at this point, and that's great for Marvel. Marvel's a completely different thing. I do enjoy a lot of Marvel movies. My absolute favorite so far has been, I wasn't a huge fan of Endgame. I know a lot of people are. I just found some of it boring. The end was great, sure. But I found that my favorite one was actually, and I'm sorry if this is going off in a bit of a rabbit trail, my favorite one was actually the one before that, not Captain Marvel, the Infinity War. I found that one engaging the entire time. There was a lot of emotion during it. Like I mean, I think I cried about like 3 or 4 times in that movie. And there's so many moving pieces, but they all worked, and there's so much going on that I was entertained the entire time. I don't think there's like one part of that movie where I was like, well, this sucks, or this could get cut out, or like I enjoyed it, the whole thing. So that was that little rabbit trail. So I have no problem with Marvel in that regard. I mean, Doctor Strange is like super, super OP, but that's fine. It works in that universe. It doesn't work here because now there's no fear of death, or now you have to make the villains so OP to compensate that there's a fear of death. I hate that they introduced Force Heal. That is again video game. I know that there have been healers in the books, but it wasn't like this automatic, if people are healed right away. And again, it takes away the fear of death, because now you can just heal. And I'm like, okay, so like Qui-Gon Jinn could have been saved. Like it just kind of, maybe why didn't Anakin heal his mom? He was supposed to be basically like the savior of the universe. And who did he love more than his mom? So it's like, why? Okay, like now it just kind of breaks stuff now that we have this. It's like, okay, and I didn't like that they brought Palpatine back. I mean, I understand why they did it, and I think what else could you do? I mean, the villain that the guys that J.J. Abrams set up in The Force Awakens that I wanted to know more about. I was kind of curious, where did he come from, that sort of thing. And he was a new bad guy. I was, not rehashing old bad guys. And then then he gets killed off in The Last Jedi, and I'm like, what? Like, this guy's supposed to be like super powerful to the point where he can link two people so that they're having like Force Skype, and yet he can't sense the lightsaber turning. Or the fact, or what Kylo Ren's intentions are. It was almost comical. I mean, I felt like bursting out laughing, like, especially the way he died. I was like, you gotta be kidding me. I mean, I was like, am I in a spoof? Like, I love Spaceballs, but I mean, Spaceballs was done better, like, I felt like saying this was Star Wars. So and so I get why J.J. Abrams brought back Palpatine, because what else were you going to do? Kylo Ren was not a menacing enough bad guy like Darth Vader was. You could have done something with oh gosh, who's the redhead guy? See, I can't even remember his name. I'm gonna remember it later. Like he came across as this also like a military leader. He was like, and then they just kind of slapped him around in Last Jedi. I'm like, do you really do that to your bad guys? Like, you keep slapping your guys around in front of people. You're not gonna have, like, the Empire was menacing. You guys come across as a bunch of overpowered teenagers that can't figure out their emotions. And what is with all the screaming? Like, everyone screamed in that movie. And Darth Vader raised his voice, absolutely, but he barely did that, and he was still very menacing. Shout out to Jeremy Johns. I actually watch a lot of his videos on Star Wars, and he did an awesome one on screaming, and I thought it was awesome. And I think I laughed probably about the whole video. But he makes some excellent points about how you don't have to be screaming to be a villain, or to be bad. Uh, anyway, another rabbit trail. Okay, so I don't like the Force heal. That I know that they introduced it in the Mandalorian. I do actually like the Mandalorian. I and it.
And I'm watching it right now.
Yes, we just
And
got
I saw
Disney.
a funny part. And
We just got
now
Disney Plus, and so he's very excited. Why don't you tell him what you saw?
I saw two guys riding back monsters that are trying to attack them, and they jumped over a crack in a big crack in the floor, and there's like.
It's really cool.
And now
I do like the Mandalorian.
I'm now I'm on season 1, episode 2.
Nice. I do like the Mandalorian. I'm going to talk about the Mandalorian too. And the reason why I think it's a little bit more acceptable in the Mandalorian is just because we don't know much about the Yoda species. So I will talk about that in a minute. Okay, so I don't like that. I just don't like how everyone's so overpowered. It's just, and the problem I also have with bringing back Palpatine, and I get it. What else is J.J. Abrams going to do? Who's he going to introduce now? Like, a trilogy shouldn't have a different bad guy every, like it should have kind of a consistent thing going here. The Emperor might not really have been wasn't shown in episode 4, was shown in episode 5 briefly, so you knew that he was around. You didn't know much about him, and then he was much more prominent in. Sorry, did I say? I said episode 5, right? Then he was much more prominent in episode 6. Again, remember, I'm not a YouTuber, so I'm probably making mistakes here somewhere. Feel free to point them out. Especially when I go on a rant, sometimes I flub something. Anyway, but the problem I have with bringing back Palpatine is that you're basically giving a middle finger to Darth Vader. It's like, well, why was he the chosen one? The Emperor's just going to come back anyway. What was the big deal that he defeated, the Emperor by throwing him down that shaft? I just had a lot of problems with that, and I love Darth Vader. You ask my son who his absolute favorite, my oldest one, who's his absolute favorite Star Wars character is, he'll tell you it's Darth Vader. He loves Darth Vader. So this just felt like a big middle finger to that, I guess, and it was like.
Got Disney Plus. To download on.
Yes. And it just felt like, okay, I know that they did it kind of in the books, but the difference in the book is that, it was his clone. It wasn't the real, and I remember, I think it was controversial then too, but, it was his clone. It wasn't the real Palpatine, so, it didn't take away from Darth Vader.
And there's Baby Yoda. Spoilers.
Well, technically we know he's not actually Yoda. It's just what everyone calls him. Really, he's the child. So in this video, we'll refer to Baby Yoda as the child, just to, because I think.
No, it is Baby Yoda.
I think no people have called him that, but he's not really Yoda.
Yeah, he is.
No,
he is.
no, he's not Yoda. Yoda's dead by then. Because this is, I think, supposed to be after Empire Strikes Back. So.
No, this is before all the other stuff.
No, it's not. It's because they talk about the remnants of the Empire. Sorry. Anyway, so for this episode, we'll call him the child. Sorry, my son has a bad cough. Anyway.
Yoda.
I know that I also watch Angry Joe, and he has a theory that it's so he calls him Yodel. So his theory is that it's the kid of I hope I'm not butchering this, Yaddle and Yoda. Just look up who Yaddle is. Honestly, I didn't even know that. I missed it the first few times watching episode 1, I didn't even know that there was like a female Yoda type person on the council, so I completely missed it. But if you look it up at Wikipedia, you can get some more information on Yaddle. Now, so I'm not a huge fan of Rise of Skywalker, and then it bothers me that she just kind of takes the Skywalker name. She's not a Skywalker. They've made that clear. She's not a Skywalker. She's a Palpatine. But I feel like she didn't earn it. She barely knew Luke. She was there, I don't know how long she was on that planet. She certainly wasn't listening to him. And I hated the fact that he was like some sort of bitter old man. Like, I mean, if you have Mark Hamill, who's I know that actors have to follow directors, and he did. But if you have an actor who's been a certain character, and knows the character inside and out, and you can't even take even a little bit of suggestion from him, and then and he's got issues with the character, then you have issues with what you're doing. I mean, directors have taken things from from actors because they know the character really well. There was a scene in Jurassic Park that had changed because Jeff Goldblum said, wouldn't it be really cool if, I think it was the flare scene where he runs with the flare. That was his idea. And Steven Spielberg listened and he liked it and he went with it. There's things that but like if you watch the videos on the behind the scenes and whatnot, Mark Hamill doesn't look happy making the movie. And you look at like I've seen videos of them making the original trilogy, and they look like they were having fun. I mean, even watching Jedi Fallen Order, how they made Jedi Fallen Order, you watch them, they look like they're having fun being there and like doing the actions for the gameplay and everything, and it looked like they were just having fun. And that's, Star Wars it should be fun, doesn't mean that bad stuff can't happen. Empire Strikes Back was dark. There was a lot of bad stuff that happened, but it was still a great ride. I loved that movie. I like Jedi Fallen Order. That, by the way, that's a really fun video game. I haven't finished it yet, but I liked it. It reminded me of some of the older Star Wars games that were fun, and I like the character. Nothing seems too force broken. Like I like the idea that he doesn't remember a lot of his training because he looks kind of like 12 maybe when the purge happened. So he wasn't fully trained. And then he lived like, I don't know, like 10 years maybe after the purge, not living as a Jedi, not using his abilities. He reached out accidentally, maybe, or as a reaction when something bad was happening, and that's when he gets discovered. But so it kind of makes sense that as he's going through the game, he has to remember how to do this. He has to think back to when his master trained him, and he has to kind of, and he still isn't facing the ultimate bad guy. Like, he doesn't face Darth Vader until the end, and then he, spoiler, I'm gonna, I should just say spoilers for anything that has to do with Star Wars. And then he kind of loses to Darth Vader. Like, he gets injured. It wasn't until the Now I thought maybe she was a little bit OP for somebody who also wasn't using the Force, for who had cut herself off. But at least she was fully trained before the purge happened, so it kind of makes sense she'd be more powerful. I was surprised a little bit at how powerful. It was kind of like,
And I'm exercising.
as I was saying, sorry, my kids get very excited. As I was saying, it would kind of make sense if she kind of held him there, and then enough for him to kind of, like, it would make sense to me if they had done this, if she used enough ability to hold him there, and then enough for him to kind of get up and then maybe help, and the two of them together could defeat Darth Vader, or at least enough to get out. Not obviously not defeat him because he's around later, but enough to get out. But it was very intriguing. There was definitely a lot of care that went into the game. There was a lot of care that went into the story play. They didn't break anything from what I could tell, and again, it was fun. And I guess just the other thing the one last issue I had, and I'm sorry to anybody who is a fan of this, I am not a Reylo fan. I can't even understand why people want to ship them together. I mean, at first I thought it was gross because I was convinced she was Luke Skywalker's kid. And I know that Luke and Leia did share a kiss, and I'm sure that lots of people have referenced this, and I'm pretty sure this was, like, I think George Lucas wanted to do a couple of different things, or wanted to do maybe a couple more movies before we got to, when he kept referring to another. So I think in his mind, he didn't picture the other being Leia yet. It wasn't until he was doing, and that he decided to make her the other and make her Skywalker. So, I can forgive that a little bit because neither one of them knew. Knew that they were, and even then, it was one kiss. It didn't even lead anywhere. She was definitely hung up on Han Solo, and frankly, I love Luke Skywalker. I'm just going to put that right out there. I love Luke Skywalker. I think his story arc is great for episode 4, 5, and 6. I loved his compassion. I loved the fact that he was just willing to do whatever was necessary, and it was great. But my favorite character probably was Han Solo. I thought he was such a badass. He was suave, he was smooth. Admittedly, as a teenager, I was totally in love with him. I'm not a Reylo fan. I found that she thought he was a monster for most of it. So, and then she sees him without his shirt off and is like, oh, forget it. It's okay that you kill all these people. You're hot. Like, basically people are shipping her with somebody who, kind of is a mass murderer, and definitely has anger issues. So, I know J.J. Abrams I heard that he had said that he had them kiss because he wanted to appease. There was apparently a fan base for it. But honestly, it was pointless because he kills them off anyway. So now the Reylo fans are mad at him. So so good job. I don't know. I thought the whole thing was stupid. I was like, I honestly thought she was going to get together with Finn. I liked Finn from Force Awakens. Then his character kind of became a stupid sidekick for pretty much episode 8 and 9, to the point where I don't care. Sorry, Finn. I think that they just did your character totally wrong. And again, when I criticize the characters, I'm not criticizing the actors. The actors, I think, did absolutely fine for what they were given. It's like I didn't like the character of Rose Tico. I think Kelly Marie Tran is a great actress. I think that it was kind of just shit what they gave her. um, and I think she's actually quite lovely. I think she's quite attractive, and they make her kind of look. I don't know. Are they trying to make her look dumpy on purpose? I mean, hey, look, this is coming from somebody who is, I'm wearing a hoodie, so it's kind of hard to tell, but, who is definitely, time has caught up, so, I'm not as thin as I used to be, especially after having 2 kids. So I think my point is that, it's totally fine to have characters that of all different shapes and sizes. I just think that she is genuinely a beautiful person, and I don't know why she couldn't be made to look that in the movie. I guess episode 8 and 9 just kind of leaves such a sour taste in my mouth that, you know, I was really feeling I was feeling really dismayed about how my beloved franchise, and I know maybe this isn't something to feel heartbroken about, I guess, but it was just, you know, I was a fan since I was a little girl, and it was something that I could talk to my dad about, you know, and it was something I wanted to also share with my kids. I haven't actually shown them The Last Jedi, and I'm probably not going to. I don't want to see Solo. I still haven't seen it. I mean, it's pretty lame how they came up with his last name. I know, like, it's just, I didn't need to know that. I had some issues with that movie, from what I heard. Mueller does a great Unbridled Rage video with that. And basically, you get the entire plot without actually having to see the movie, and it's awesome. So I feel like I don't have to see the movie to know it's bad, and his video is actually much more entertaining, I'm sure. Yeah, I just but then there was some hope, is that I actually like The Mandalorian. I like this kind of episodic feature. Like, when I was young, which I was born in the early 80s, that's how TV shows were. Anyway, I was at my nephew's birthday party, and my sister's kid, and hi Jada. Anyway, one of the kids there said, he's like, he really likes The Mandalorian, but he hates the fact that he has to wait every week for a new episode. And my sister and I had a kind of a good chuckle, because we were like, that's how TV was when we were young. We couldn't binge watch a show. It was like, that's a Netflix thing. That's not really how real TV worked when we were young. We didn't have Netflix. We also didn't have cell phones, and I didn't have my first one till I was 18, and it was a flip phone. And I loved that flip phone. I really like the fact that, first my youngest son Lincoln got into The Mandalorian with me. He thought it was really cool. He loved the child.
Whoa, look at this.
And actually only recently my older son has not been a huge Star Wars fan. Lincoln has definitely been much more into Star Wars with me. I mean, we have a lightsaber. I mean, what Star Wars home doesn't have a lightsaber? And Leland just recently decided he wanted to get his own, so he bought a red one. So he always likes playing the bad guy. I'm not sure if I should be worried about that. Just kidding. Anyway, I do like The Mandalorian. I do like the episodic feel, but they do still somewhat build on each other to an extent. Some are definitely more than others. And it's just kind of fun to watch. There've been some great episodes. I loved the final episode. Some people didn't like the beginning of it. The banter between the two stormtroopers. I loved that actually because I liked the humor, so I was like, okay, we're kind of taking a different pace for the beginning of the episode, and I thought it was fun. I did say I would talk about the child and about his ability to heal. He does seem very OP, and I know that was my huge complaint with Rey. Now, the one thing I'm going to say about this here, about the child, is that we don't know much about the race. There are some, and this has been in other Star Wars things before, there are some races that are much more sensitive to the Force than others. I'm surprised that he's still acting like a baby because he's 50. I know they age a lot slower. But if Yoda lived to be 900 years old, I would have pictured 50 years old. This kid would be about 5. So, I mean, unless he's like just acting more infantile he's not a full-on baby because he's walking. My kids didn't. Well, one walked really early at 11 months, but the other one didn't walk really until he was probably about 1.5, like full on walking. He's doing stuff. I'm actually surprised he's not talking because my kids talked before they walked. Especially my youngest one, my oldest one, sorry. He'd been talking and nattering since he was really young. I wonder where he gets that from. But besides the age thing that I think I have a bit of an issue with, I'm like trying to gauge how old roughly, because he comes across more as like 1-ish, maybe 1.5. So unless Yoda died young for his species, I don't know. But we didn't know a lot about his species, and being I know, for example, there are the Maralukas, and who are a blind species, but they see through the Force, so which kind of tells me that they're a bit more attuned with the Force, maybe. I think there have been other references to older Jedi when they start to lose their sight to use the Force more often. But Maralukas would have had to, use the Force to see even as children. Now, aside from that, I actually don't know that much about Maralukas. It was in reference to KOTOR 2. There was a Maraluka there, and they did talk about it. So I'm not saying I'm an expert on that. I'm just saying that there could be some species that are much more attuned to the Force than others. But we know what humans can do. We know the brain of a human. We know how much the human can absorb mentally. And from what we've seen from other human Jedi, they need to learn, just like we need to go to school and learn how to do things. I'm still going to school. I'm trying to finish my degree. And from what we've seen from other human Jedi, they need to learn, just like we need to learn to when we go to school, how to do things. There's some people that are more gifted intellectually, sure, that it comes easier, but you still have to go to school to learn. I kind of take that approach with how the Jedi are. You still have to learn. And I guess I just don't like Rey's arc. It's like she doesn't suffer, really. I mean, everyone suffers, to some extent. But, there's no hero's journey involved, I guess. There was no, she didn't lose a limb. She didn't... have some great loss. She didn't lose any battle that she fought in. That's not interesting. That's boring. Luke Skywalker lost a lot. Now, aside from the limb he lost his aunt and uncle at the very beginning. His whole world got turned upside down after that. He did lose his limb. He found out that the second most evil guy in the galaxy was his dad. His friend got captured at the very end of Empire Strikes Back. He lost to Darth Vader, and then I guess here's the other thing too, is that from what I heard, Rey kills Palpatine, but Luke was given that same thing where he didn't give in to his anger, and he didn't strike Palpatine down, because if you strike someone down in your in anger, the idea is that it leads to the dark side. So, I love the fact that he kind of has like a up yours to Rian Johnson with the whole Luke grabbing the lightsaber. But here's the thing. Again, when did Force Ghosts ever have the ability to grab anything? It's just... that was the whole point. Obi-Wan was there in spirit. He could talk to Luke. He could give him guidance and counseling and counsel and help him figure out what to do. But he couldn't interfere. He wasn't on the same plane of existence, I guess, if you want to put it that way. The Force Ghosts are totally messed up now. Everyone's so powered, and I don't care about where the whole... I liked some of the characters in the Force Awakens. I thought that they were a good setup. I did like Poe. I thought he was a great pilot. They kind of set that up. I was fine with that. And then they kind of made him into... I don't know. I can't even describe what they made him into in The Last Jedi. I hated the fact that Leia slapped him. I'm like, if the roles were reversed and that was a male leader talking down to a female subordinate, and he slapped her, that you'd have people uptight. Why is it different if you switch the genders? It just doesn't make sense, and it just, I don't know. And I hated Holdo. I was like, felt nothing for her when she died. I was like, fine. What military leader is like, watches all these people die and doesn't say anything? And the way she talks down to Poe, it was like, really? Like, he's supposed to be your crack pilot. Like, why? I didn't like her. I thought that she was a bad leader. I watched a video once where somebody pointed out the fact that Leia would never have led that way. And it's true. In Empire Strikes Back, she... and he makes this point. I'm sorry, I wish I knew who the YouTuber was. I just happened to see this once, and it's something I completely agree with. But he makes this point about how she was the lead. Like during Empire Strikes Back, somebody does question her plan on how to get out, and rather than berating him and saying, "Hey, you just follow my orders," she explains further to put her soldiers at ease. That's what a good leader does. A good leader doesn't just bark orders and say, "You follow my orders." That's it. A good leader wants to put everyone at ease and a good leader is easy to follow. I would have probably been with Poe and been part of that mutiny because I was like, people are dying, and then they broke hyperspace. Because man, that things would have changed if you. Let's just like build a bunch of ships, send them in hyperspace, and then launch them at other ships unmanned. I was like, man, it was impressive display. I mean, there's a lot in The Last Jedi that was beautiful, beautifully shot. It was just senseless. So The Mandalorian's kind of giving me some hope. I do enjoy it. I am curious to see where they're gonna go in season 2. So it's giving me a little bit more optimism about some of these.
Now let's get my
I've seen.
hat on.
So I am
I want my hat on.
hopefully optimistic about. I am hopefully optimistic about the new Obi-Wan series because I love Ewan McGregor. I thought he did a fantastic Obi-Wan. Anyway, he copied a lot of his Alec Guinness's mannerisms by watching how he was in the other episodes, and honestly, he was really good. I enjoyed it. I am somewhat a fan of the prequels. I know that they had issues, but at least it seemed like a coherent story. Like it kind of had, a flow to it. I didn't feel like some things in one were really contradicting necessarily in another. And honestly, I liked The Revenge of the Sith. I thought that it was interesting. I was entertained by it. I did enjoy it. I know there's a lot of people that hate the prequels, and that's totally fine. And there's a lot of things that are wrong with it. But it was, at least for me, Revenge of the Sith was at least entertaining. And I enjoyed it. And, Anyway, so I'm hoping that the Obi-Wan Kenobi series is also good. I heard Deborah Chow is directing it, and I know she directed a couple episodes of The Mandalorian, so that gives me some hope, on how she might do this series. So that's good. I don't know what the I know that there's going to be a new series for the guy from Rogue One. I did like him in Rogue One, so could be interesting. At least I'd want to check it out. So far, I know that I've kind of rambled a lot, and and I have a lot of opinions about this, and I'm sorry if I've gone down a lot of rabbit holes. There's a lot of stuff in the Star Wars universe to talk about. If you ever want to hear from me again, absolutely let me know. I don't mind doing these videos. I don't know if you were entertained by this or if you think I'm completely out to lunch on a lot of my opinions. That's okay too. If you liked The Rise of Skywalker, that is totally fine. If you liked The Last Jedi, that is also totally fine. I heard once that if you think of The Last Jedi not as a Star Wars movie, but as a completely different movie, you might enjoy it. So, I mean, I think we can all, as Star Wars fans, I think, we don't have to go down the road of, like, name-calling or bashing each other. I think that everyone is entitled to their own opinion. Unfortunately, these trilogies have definitely divided the fan base, and that's quite unfortunate because I think, for the most part, I don't think anything's quite divided us like this before. But I think I've kind of said my piece about how I'm feeling about the state of the Star Wars galaxy right now. I think it's a mess. Yeah, I don't know. It's I'm hoping that there'll be more things like The Mandalorian and Jedi Fallen Order, to get some of the fans back into Star Wars. Even at my office, we did Secret Santa, and we were asked, to write on a sheet kind of the things that we like and we don't like. I put Star Wars, but then I put in brackets original trilogy. I do not want anything to do with Rey or Kylo Ren. I do actually have a Kylo Ren from last year. Christmas ornament somebody gave me. So that's fine. Actually, I think Adam Driver's a great actor. I don't think I have anything against him. I think that it's just his character was kind of whiny for a lot of the stuff, and Anakin was too, but at some point he becomes Darth Vader. I mean, and he definitely seemed much more controlled with his emotions in The Revenge of the Sith. So I just realized I was like, I don't care about this other trilogy, and that's kind of a sad thing because I love Star Wars. I was talking with my kids today about what movie we should go see, and it was down to Rise of Skywalker or Jumanji. And the more I thought about it, the more I was like, I don't want to see that movie because it's just I'm gonna sit there going, it's not what George Lucas would have done, or it's actually not what that's just not what they should have done. This was a crap show from the beginning. Well, I mean, that's what you get though with having different directors like this. They're, with completely different visions. I'm actually really curious to know what Colin Trevorrow's vision was. It'd be kind of interesting to hear what his perspective was. I know George Lucas isn't the greatest script writer. I know that. But he's definitely a visionary. He has great ideas for where things should go.
We're all in the same room.
And I think that the reason why the books work so well was because I think he was still somewhat involved. I don't know to what extent he was involved, but I think he still had to get approval of where the story was going to go.
Hello.
But, Jeremy Johns does this really great video on how, on about George Lucas feeling betrayed. You should go watch it. It's actually really, really good. And it's frankly, I don't think there was a thing I disagreed with in his video. Anyway, I think I've said all that I need to say. So, hey, if you like this video, give me a like. If you didn't like it, obviously give me a dislike. Feel free to comment on anything I've said. I apologize. This has actually turned out to be a much longer video than I had originally intended. But I think I had a lot to say that I wanted to get off my chest. So I think I finally have done that now. So anyway, so I just want to say see ya, and may the force be with you. Bye.